Right, it is recording. So I'll start with sharing the screen, if you don't mind. Can you all see the screen? Hijabian, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. So that's the agenda. Welcome and apologies. I think we've got apologies from a few people. Hijabian, બીજું કોઈ આવ્યું છે? Apologies માં નથી ને બીજું કોઈ?
હજી કોઈ આવ્યું નથી. મેં ઈમેલ ચેક નથી કર્યા પણ don't think so.
Okay. All right, we'll have some general aspects આપણે કરશું, which is what we already know, but it's a useful revision. We'll look at the basket of evidence, teacher assessment grades માટે, અને એની જરૂરિયાતો શું છે એ વિશે જરા ચર્ચા કરીશું. Content mapping, we've got some idea of what they've given us. એટલે આપણે content mapping જે એના વિશે પણ વાત કરીશું, અને grade descriptors. Speaking endorsement, just a revision, if you like. આપણે નવેમ્બરમાં કે ડિસેમ્બરમાં લાગે છે આપણે એના ઉપર ટ્રેનિંગ કરેલી છે already, but we just need to go through it once again. Guidance on what evidence to provide to the exam center. That is what we'll get help from. Gopal Bhai Pindoria is going to help us with that. We will then have a question and answer session. Hopefully we can answer your questions, and then we shall close. So I think it will be about maybe an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half, something like that. Okay. Right, key dates, as you know, 18મી જૂન સુધીમાં બધા grades ને exam board ને મળી જવા જોઈએ, including your speaking endorsement. So the deadline for the center, I think, is for the 18th of June. એટલે જે શિક્ષકો છે એ લોકોએ 18 જૂન પહેલા તમારે બોર્ડ ને બધું આપી દેવું જોઈએ. 18th is when it should go to the board from the center. એટલે આપણે વહેલા કરવાની જરૂર છે. ને results, A level results 10મી ઓગસ્ટના બહાર પડશે ને GCSE ના 12મી ઓગસ્ટના. કારણ કે આમાં પરીક્ષા નથી લેવાની એટલે they will be able to do that a lot quicker. 12મી ઓગસ્ટના બધા રિઝલ્ટ બહાર આવી જાય પછી અપીલ્સ કે એવું કંઈ હોય તો એના માટે સમય રહી શકે એટલા માટે. બાસ્કેટ ઓફ એવિડન્સ એટલે વસ્તુ તમે એવિડન્સ માટે શું શું મૂકી શકો. તમે ક્લાસરૂમમાં જે ક્લાસ વર્ક કરેલું હોય એમાં પણ અમુક કંઈક એસે લખેલો હોય, કોઈ નિબંધ હોય સારો એવો, એના વિશે તમે કોઈ ગ્રેડ આપેલો હોય અથવા તો રિમાર્ક્સ હોય, that could be given as part, that is something that's part of the evidence. Not all the classwork. Selected classwork which you can grade. Classroom માં તમે test આપેલો હોય તો maybe that test result you can put in as well. The test itself, what it included, and what the candidate got in that test. You can also put in mock exams if you've done a mock exam. કોઈ આપણે પરીક્ષા કરી હોય પેપર લઈને, હજી આપણી પાસે સમય તો છે કારણ કે જૂનની 18 છે એટલે તમે જૂનની શરૂઆતમાં પણ એક mock exam લેવી હોય તો લઈ શકો. પણ I'll wait for what people have to say, people more expert than me. And you can also give evidence of additional mini assessments you might have done. એટલે આ 2 વર્ષનો કોર્સ છે એ દરમિયાન તમે કોઈ ટેસ્ટ લીધા હોય એનું કઈ રિઝલ્ટ હોય એ પણ તમે એમાં લઈ શકો. JCQ, Joint Council for Qualifications, એ સંસ્થા છે જે ચારેય આપણે એક્ઝામિનેશન જે સંસ્થાઓ છે ચારેય એક્ઝામ બોર્ડ એની એક સંસ્થા છે, એક મળીને એ લોકો ભેગા થઈને એક સંસ્થા બનાવી છે. That is called JCQ, Joint Council for Qualifications. Edexcel આવી જાય, એમાં બીજા બોર્ડ છે. I think there are 3 boards, એ બધા આવી જાય એમાં. So what you should do is retain copies of what you're using as evidence. For internal standardization means તમે શિક્ષકો વચ્ચે તમે સ્ટાન્ડર્ડાઇઝ કરી શકો કે બે શિક્ષક હોય તો એ લોકો ગ્રેડ્સ તમે આપ્યા હોય તમે સરખાવી શકો કે આવો જો એવિડન્સ હોય તો તમે એને ગ્રેડ 6 આપો બંનેનું સરખું છે કે નહીં એવી રીતે ઇન્ટરનલી તમે મેળવી શકો ગ્રેડ સરખાવી શકો ને ઇફ યુ કીપ ધેટ એઝ એવિડન્સ પછી કદાચ જો સ્ટુડન્ટ અપીલમાં જાય તો તમારી પાસે એને માટે કંઈક માહિતી હોય કે ભાઈ આ બધી માહિતી છે આ એવિડન્સ છે આના આધારે અમે આ ગ્રેડ આપેલ છે સો ધેન if that evidence is there you can support it when if a student appeals કે આ તમે ગ્રેડ ખોટો આપેલો છે if evidence is from earlier in the year but material hasn't been saved it can still be used to contribute towards decision કે એવિડન્સ તમારી પાસે હોય પણ તમે એ એસે જે છે અથવા તો એ ચોપડી છે તમે એ સેવ રાખી ન હોય પણ તમારી પાસે છે એવિડન્સ કે તમે ગયે વર્ષે અથવા ગયે ટર્મમાં પરીક્ષા લીધી એનું આ રિઝલ્ટ છે એના માટે અમે આ ગ્રેડ આપેલ છે then that is fine. Okay. Available to center teachers. Centers છે જેમ વિલ્સડન મંદિર છે એ એક એક્ઝામિનેશન સેન્ટર છે BAPS છે એક્ઝામિનેશન સેન્ટર છે પછી આપણે SKSS છે કેન્ટન રોડ ઉપર કેન્ટન મંદિર એ પણ એક્ઝામિનેશન સેન્ટર છે ને જે બધી આપણી શાળાઓ હોય છે સ્કૂલ્સ જ્યાં આપણે બાળકોને એન્ટર કરીએ છીએ એ સેન્ટરના જે શિક્ષકો હોય અથવા સેન્ટર પોતે એને આ બધી માહિતી મળી શકે છે એડિશનલ એસેસમેન્ટ મટીરિયલ જે આપણે વાપરી શકાય કે એમાં જૂના જે એક્ઝામિનેશન જે લીધી હોય પેપર્સ એના સવાલ હોય એમાંથી આપણે ચૂઝ કરી શકીએ બાળકોને આપવા માટે બાસ્કેટ ઓફ એવિડન્સ ગાઈડન્સ એ પણ છે વેબસાઇટ ઉપર અને ગ્રેડિંગ ગાઈડન્સ એ પણ છે હવે આ બધી વસ્તુઓ we have managed to get them from the centers but otherwise at the moment it is locked we will try and make it available to you on the basis of your needs if you like ઘણાને તો આ મળી ગઈ હોય છે વસ્તુ બધી પણ જો ન મળી હોય અથવા મેળવી શકતા ન હોય તો you can either contact me or Gopal bhai we will try between us to get you the documents from the examination board if it is locked by then. Grade descriptors, this is available as well. આપણે આના વિશે પણ ચર્ચા કરીશું. Grade descriptors for grade 8, grade 6, grade 4, grade 2. ને આ A level ના grades છે પણ A level ની આપણે અત્યારે વાત નહીં કરીએ. We'll focus on GCSE grade descriptors. Grade exemplars for every language. These are also available on the website, but they are not open. They are locked at the moment. એટલે grade 8 જે છે એ જે કોઈ જે બાળકો 8 ગ્રેડ મેળવેલો હોય 8 ગ્રેડ 8 એ લોકોએ રાઇટિંગમાં જે રિસ્પોન્સ આપેલો હોય that is available and the chief examiner's comments on those are available. એટલે એમાંથી આપણે શીખી શકીએ કે આ ચીફ એક્ઝામિનરે અથવા GCSE ના એક્ઝામિનરે આ બાળકને why did they give them a grade 8? In the same way, you can look at grade 6 descriptors of students. That is available. So you can see how they have awarded grade 6 to that student. તમે એનું કામ પણ જોઈ શકો એ જે શિક્ષકે જે માર્કિંગ કરેલું છે એ પણ જોઈ શકો અને એમાંથી તમને ખ્યાલ આવે કે આવું કંઈ હોય તો એને આપણે ગ્રેડ 6 અથવા ગ્રેડ 4 અથવા ગ્રેડ 2 એમ ગ્રેડ આપી શકીએ એટલે આ ચારેયના એક્ઝામ્પલ્સ છે ફોર લિસનિંગ રીડિંગ and writing. Speaking તો છે નહીં એટલે સ્પીકિંગ નથી પણ બીજી 3 સ્કિલ્સ છે એ ત્રણના આ ડિસ્ક્રિપ્ટર્સ છે ને એક્ઝેમ્પલાર્સ બી છે ડિસ્ક્રિપ્ટર્સ તો પહેલેથી જ મેળવેલા છે ઘણા વખતે પણ એક્ઝેમ્પલાર્સ છે એ નવી વસ્તુ છે એટલે ગુજરાતીમાં એ પણ આપણે મળી શકશે ઉપલબ્ધ થશે એક્સપેક્ટેડ પબ્લિકેશન મિડ એપ્રિલ એટલે અત્યાર સુધીમાં બધું આવી ગયું છે લગભગ અને મેમાં પણ અમુક વધારે વસ્તુ આવવાની છે સ્પીકિંગ એન્ડોર્સમેન્ટ ની આપણે વાત કરીએ તો no need for centers to supply evidence of speaking. કઈ evidence આપવાની જરૂર નથી. Okay? Endorsements and speaking skills do not form part of the awarding organization's quality assurance process. એટલે સ્પીકિંગમાં એ લગભગ 100% તમારા ઉપર છોડી દે છે કે તમે એને 3 જે ગ્રેડ છે એમાંથી કયો ગ્રેડ આપો છો, ઉત્તમ, મધ્યમ કે પછી નબળો, અથવા તો બિલો આપણે કહીએ ને પાસ ગ્રેડ. પાસ ગ્રેડ, મેરિટ ગ્રેડ ને ડિસ્ટિંક્શન, એ 3 ગ્રેડ્સ છે. એને માટે જે તમારી પાસે એનો જે પુરાવા હોય એ તમારે રાખી મૂકવાના હોય, પણ સેન્ટરને આપવાની જરૂર નથી. કદાચ અપીલ થાય તો તમને એ કામ આવે, but you don't need to give it to the center. The level only needs to relate to the content you have been able to cover. તમે કારણ કે કોવિડને લીધે 2 વર્ષનું કદાચ તમારું સિલેબસમાં પૂરું થયું ન હોય, તો જે તમે કામ પૂરું કરેલું હોય એના ઉપર જ તમે સવાલ પૂછી શકો. That is what they are saying. એટલે તમારી શાળા જો એક ટર્મ બંધ રહી હોય અથવા તો 2 મહિના બંધ રહી હોય, એની લીધે તમે 5માંથી 3 જ સ્કીમ, 3 જ આપણે થીમ કરેલી હોય અથવા 4 જ થીમ કરેલી હોય, તો એ રીતે જ આપણે સવાલ પૂછવાના રહીએ. જે આપણે કવર ન કરી શક્યા હોય એ વિશે આપણે સવાલ પૂછવાની જરૂર નથી. સ્પીકિંગ હોય કે પછી લિસનિંગ હોય, રીડિંગ હોય, રાઇટિંગ હોય, બધામાં લાગુ પડે છે. The level only needs to relate to the content you have been able to cover. Okay? એટલે આપણે એમ ના કહીએ કે આ કવર નથી કર્યું એટલા માટે આનો ગ્રેડ ઓછો છે, એમ નહીં. જે પણ તમારી પાસે માહિતી છે એના ઉપરથી ગ્રેડ આપવાનો હોય છે. Teachers' decision to keep the records in order to explain the students how they arrived at the judgments. એટલે તમે જો તમારા રેકોર્ડ રાખો, જે આ લોકો બાળકોએ પરીક્ષા આપી હોય, હવે એ તમને પૂછે કે તમે કેવી રીતે મને આ ગ્રેડ આપ્યો છે, you don't have to tell them the grade. You can only tell them what it is that you have got as evidence at the most, but you don't have to tell them the grade, either for speaking or for listening, reading or writing. But you can just tell them they are working towards this grade or something like that. You can give a rough idea, but you can't give them what your judgment is. Speaking endorsement resources, they're all there on the website. Training materials 2020 માં કરેલું એ લોકોએ, ને આપણે પણ કરેલું છે નવેમ્બર લાસ્ટ યર. એન્ડોર્સમેન્ટના ક્રાઇટેરિયા છે, પાસ ગ્રેડના શું હોય, મેરિટ ગ્રેડના શું ક્રાઇટેરિયા છે, ને distinction છે એના ક્રાઇટેરિયા. It's all available on the website. Additional guidance for language range is also available. Frequently asked questions, again, all those are available. And at a glance, assessment sheets. So all that is on the website already. હવે પ્રાઇવેટ કેન્ડિડેટ્સ છે, પ્રાઇવેટ એટલે જે સેન્ટર એ લોકોને એન્ટર કરતા હોય એને એ લોકોએ પોતે ભણાવેલા હોય. ફોર એક્ઝામ્પલ, અત્યારે ગોપાલભાઈ પિંડોરિયા વિલ્સન મંદિરમાંથી તમારા બાળકને એન્ટર કરે છે, then your child, your student is an external student, કારણ કે ગોપાલભાઈના શિક્ષકોએ તમારા બાળકને ગુજરાતી ભણાવ્યું નથી. So you are an external candidate. જો ગોપાલભાઈના પોતાના જે મંદિરના બાળકો છે એને એન્ટર કરે, they are not external, they are Gopalbhai's end. So that is the difference between the two. Learners, right, that we all know. And the last point, there is JCQ interim guidance. એ ગાઈડન્સ આપણે ગોપાલભાઈ તરફથી હમણાં મેળવીશું 1 મિનિટમાં, પણ 26મી એપ્રિલ is the last date before which you have to put your entries in. એના પછી તમે કરો તો late fees will become applicable. અત્યાર સુધી 26 તારીખ સુધી late fee નહીં લેવાય, પણ એના પછી લેવાશે. એ જાણવું જરૂરી છે. Okay? Before I give it over to Gopalbhai, I just want to do a couple of things more. So I'll come off, stop share. Any questions so far? If you raise your hand, I don't know who you are. Okay.
Sorry, જયંતભાઈ, એક ક્વેશ્ચન છે ઉર્વશી ફ્રોમ વેદા મંદિર. અમારા એક સ્ટુડન્ટ છે તો એ લોકોની સ્કૂલ વાળા એવું કહે છે કે જે પાસ પેપર્સ છે તો એ લોકો યુઝ કરશે ફોર ધી એક્ઝામિનેશન ને પછી અમારે માર્કિંગ કરવાનું છે. તો હાઉ ડઝ ધેટ વર્ક? કારણ કે અમે બધા ટોપિક્સ કવર નથી કરેલા બીકોઝ સ્કૂલ બંધ હતી લાસ્ટ યર. એટલે અમે વેદા મંદિરમાં જે ચલાવતા હતા તે.
Right. So when we go through the curriculum guide, you will be able to know kaya topics તમે કરેલા છે ને કયા નથી. So you can use that grid to let the center know these are the ones that we have covered, these are the ones we have not covered.
Right.
Okay. So that spreadsheet is available, which I'll go through now in a minute.
Okay.
And then you can see what's available, what is not. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other question?
જયંતભાઈ નમસ્તે.
Namaste, Yaven.
હા, તમે જે માર્ગદર્શન આપ્યું કે જે માર્ક પેપર છે એક્ઝામિનર્સ ના, એ આપણે બોર્ડના વેબસાઇટમાં જ છે?
I think ગઈકાલે એ લોકોએ મૂકેલું છે.
અચ્છા.
પણ હજી પૂરું નથી કારણ કે એ લોકોએ જે ચીફ એક્ઝામિનર જે કોમેન્ટ્સ છે એ મૂકેલા છે.
અચ્છા.
કે આ ક્વેશ્ચન 5 માં આ વિદ્યાર્થીએ આ પ્રમાણે જવાબ આપેલો. એ જવાબ જે છે એની નકલ હોય તો આપણે રિલેટ કરી શકીએ ને.
હા, બરાબર છે.
એ કેન્ડિડેટનું જે પેપર છે that is not uploaded yet.
Okay. એટલે લોકો
So it doesn't make sense. આપણે, you see what I'm saying? But it should be uploaded. એટલે that is an inquiry we have to make કે તમે ક્યારે અપલોડ કરવાના છો. એટલે ગુજરાતી ગ્રેડ 8 છે એ સ્ટુડન્ટનો જે જવાબ છે એ આપણે જોઈને પછી આપણે એ લોકોએ માર્કિંગ કરેલું હોય એમાંથી આપણે કંઈક માહિતી મેળવી શકીએ. At the moment it's not there. So I'm trying to work, maybe Gopal Bhai can help by raising that with Pearson to say when it will be available.
Okay.
And when it is, then we can forward it to the members, to all the teachers.
Okay. Thank
all
you.
right, because that's going to be very important, very useful.
Yeah. Exactly.
Gopal Bhai, have I missed anything out so far? I'm going to do some more bits anyway, but બીજું કંઈ ખાસ કહેવાનું છે from what I've said already? No? Okay. Any other questions? All right, let's move on to the next part, which is, I have to share screen again and lose your beautiful faces. Okay. Stop share. And what is this happening? Share. Let me see what I'm doing. Take a minute. It will come out. Right, let's try again. Share screen, share mapping. All right, can you see this document?
It's not very clear though.
All right, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, that's good. Okay, so you can see this starts off with identity and culture. Who I am, who am I, daily life, cultural life. So you've got identity, culture, and you got the topics. આજે બોર્ડ આપણા જે Pearson board has already got the sample assessment material. Emma,
Jayantbhai, sorry to disturb you.
can you see
But
it?
I
or
don't
not?
know. I don't know if it's my eyes, પણ આ જરા blurry છે. ખબર નહીં બધાને કેવું દેખાય છે.
Blurry. Shall I make it bigger or smaller?
I don't think it's the bigger. It's just quite blurred. બધાને બરાબર દેખાય છે.
All right, let me
must
make
be
it
me.
bigger. Sorry.
મને બરાબર
દેખાય છે.
અમને બરાબર
Okay.
દેખાય છે.
Okay, carry on, Jayantbhai. Then that's fine. It's probably my screen.
એ બરાબર છે.
Barabar, are you sure? Okay, so let's
Okay.
just take one example. Let's take this one. Yeah. If I make this bigger,
જયંતભાઈ view પરથી કરો.
can you see that now?
Use the view and then enlarge it. Percent. Enlarge the percent from the view.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yep.
It should be okay.
All right. So,
Scroll
for
down.
example, if you look at content, this is school. What the school is like. These are the questions available. Identity and culture. Who am I? So, તમારે જે સવાલ પૂછવા હોય, some examples of questions are there, like standard assessment material છે આપણું, which is already on the website. Then question 3 on that one deals with identity and culture. Who am I? Daily life છે, that's question 13 in the SMs. The autumn 2020 newspaper છે, એમાં પણ છે. So the question is, where do I get the autumn 2020 paper? And that is locked at the moment, and that is what I think we will discuss with Gopal Bhai in a minute. Assam's છે, this is already, these are available. આ છે બધું that's available. Right? That's on the standard assessment task. But autumn 2020 ની પરીક્ષા છે, એના સવાલ છે, એ બધાય, they are locked at the moment. But we can get access to them and provide access to you. So basically what I was saying was that you can actually use this at the end here. You can put your ticks here in this column of what you have covered. And therefore you will know what you have not covered. And then you can give a copy of that for each student to your examination centers, so they know what content you have covered. Does it make sense?
Do we have to give it to the examination centers? Do we have
Yeah,
to submit that?
I think it'll be useful to do that so they know what you have covered. In case, if you covered everything, you don't need to give it anything to them.
Yeah.
તમે બધું cover કર્યું એ જુદી વાત છે. Otherwise, even when you want to find questions, this is where it is useful. You can use it yourself to find questions for different topics. And you can make your own assessment based on those topics. તમે test આપો, તો આના ઉપરથી આપો ને, then you know that you are covering the syllabus. It's not just there are 5 themes and you cover them all right up to the end, or you have covered only 4 of them, or you cover only 3 of them. But from this, at least you can tell them what you have covered, and that is why your questions should be restricted to the areas that you have covered. Am I making sense? Am I making sense? હાથ ઉપાડો.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, or you can raise your fingers, then I know. When I'm sharing screen, I can't see you. So at that stage, if I ask you a question, do take the liberty of unmuting yourself and letting me know. Otherwise, I won't know whether you can see or not. When I share, I will not be able to see what you are seeing. Only you can tell me. Okay, so that was the content coverage.
Jayantbhai, we
Any
just
questions?
had notification from Avanti School,
Yeah,
and they have actually asked for 3 criteria. One
Right.
is pre-existing evidence. The
right,
second one is specification content which has been studied, which તમે હમણાં guide કર્યું would be very useful.
that's right.
And a reasonable adjustment or excess arrangements been applied.
Right. So that is related to, say, if there's a student in your class who has been absent because of a tragedy in the family, because somebody died because of COVID, for example, or somebody was ill. So they haven't covered X number of topics because of their illness, then you're making special provision for them. So that is something you could explain.
Yeah.
It was originally meant for students who were physically or mentally not able to access, either because they couldn't see, or because they had difficulty in reading or whatever. In which case, you are making special accommodation for them, special arrangements for them.
Okay.
In our case, the special arrangements we will be making probably will be for students who have suffered because of family tragedy or illness or some kind of a difficulty of that nature. So that is the third part. The first part you mentioned was pre-existing evidence, which is from your normal tests that you've done in the class, the end of term tests or the end of year test that you might have done. Any classwork that you have marked, that's all pre-existing evidence. And then the actual evidence is the mock exams that you take, and you are using the mock exam from the papers from the board. So you can say, I use this particular board paper that is on the website for these students. All right? Any other questions? All right. Shall we push on to, I'm just going to have a quick look at grade descriptors. Shall share screen again. Right, this is the grade exemplification. Let me see if I can get grade descriptors. Right. So for grade 8, and this is for listening, yeah? Can you see this? Okay. For grade 8, they'll be able to follow these 4 bullet points. Respond and understand spoken language, including more complex extended passages. Extract information, identify opinions, draw conclusion, infer meaning. Respond to a range of passages. Respond to passages which include more complex language. All right? And for grade 6, can you see the difference? Yeah, respond and understand to spoken language, including more complex extended passages, whereas here it is including some extended passages. So this is the difference. This is extended, where this is complex. Extended and complex, you know. So you can see that it is extended only grade 6. Is extended and complex become grade 8. Right? So as you go through, you can see that how the higher grades are actually adding more and more criteria. And as you go down, a fewer criteria, if you like, or simpler criteria. All right? So that is for listening. In the same way, they've got them for reading. Yeah. Again, grade 8, grade 6, grade 4, grade 2. And then they've got them the same for writing as well. Okay. So all the 3 skills, that kind of grade descriptions are available. Yeah. Now, what we need to do is we need to make sense of these grade descriptors. But what does it actually mean? So what they've provided is exemplars, which is actual marking of students' work at grade 6, at grade 8, at grade 4, and grade 2. So that gives you a very good picture. કે જે actually એ લોકોએ માર્કિંગ કરેલું છે એક્ઝામિનર્સે જે બાળકોનું એમાં એ લોકોએ જે એક્ઝામ્પલ આપેલા છે કે આ ગ્રેડ 8 બાળક હતો એને આ સવાલનો જવાબ આ રીતે આપેલો, and that is why we gave them grade 8. So let's just go into exemplars just to give you an idea. share screen again and go to exemplars. Right, so that is great amplification, exemplification. Examiner's commentaries. Commentaries provided alongside student responses, right? So if it's not alongside students' responses, then it's difficult to find out what the examiner is trying to say. Now, what I've got now, I'll show you. You don't see these responses, you only see the commentaries. The responses are not there yet. Let's show you what it is. If you go down the page, you got grade 8 grade descriptors, grade 8 commentary, grade 6 descriptors, grade 6 commentary, and so on. Yeah. So if you look at that, this is grade 8. This is the descriptor, what it should contain, which you just discussed. And then these are the comments. Comments from the examiner. Can you see that? Question 8, part B. Listening is targeting grade 8. Bullet point 1. Candidates are required to demonstrate their ability to respond to understand spoken language, including more complex and extended passages. હવે આ બધી વસ્તુ આપણે હમણાં જોઈ grade 8 માં, બરાબર ને? A typical response will be demonstrate the ability to understand longer, difficult, or unfamiliar spoken language passages from any themes or topics given. So the examiner is saying that this candidate is actually showing this. A candidate to response nothing here. Can you see? Then it goes to grade 6, and then it goes to the commentary from the examiner. Then it goes to grade 4, grade 5, and then it goes to the commentary from the senior examiner. But the student's response is what we need to make sense of the examiner's comments is missing at the moment. So that is where, Gopal bhai, do you know if you'll be able to ring them and find out if they're putting them up or?
Yeah, I'll call them tomorrow, and
Yeah.
then as we get it, we can then provide it to everybody.
Yeah. Can you speak up, please?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll request it, and then once it's up there, I can send it out to everyone.
ઓકે, એટલે આપણે ગોપાલભાઈ આપણે બાંહેધરી આપી છે કે આવતીકાલે બોર્ડને ફોન કરી ને પૂછશે કે આ તમે જે એક્ઝામિનર્સના કોમેન્ટ્સ મોકલેલા છે એની સાથે જે બાળકોએ પરીક્ષા લીધી છે એ લોકોના જે જવાબ છે એ હોય તો એને કંઈક આપણે મતલબ કાઢી શકીએ, પણ જો એના વગર તો ખાલી ખાલી લાગે કે કોની વાત કરે છે આપણે એમ. પણ એકવાર જો આવી જાય ને તો ઇટ વિલ બી વેરી વેરી ગુડ. Any questions?
જયંતભાઈ, રીટા હિયર. જે આપણે પહેલા વાત કરી એ પ્રમાણે જે બધા મટીરિયલ્સ, પાસ્ટ પેપર મટીરિયલ્સ બધું વાપરવાનું હોય, પહેલા આપણી પાસે એટલા બધું ખાસ હોતું નહીં સાહિત્યક આપણે વાપરી શકીએ. સો ઇઝ ઇટ ઓકે કે એ લેવલ્સ એએસ ઓસીઆર ના એએસ કે એ લેવલ ના કોઈ એવા લિસનિંગ એક્ટિવિટી કે કોઈ રીડિંગ એક્ટિવિટી આપણે વાપરીએ, સે ફોર એક્ઝામ્પલ લિસનિંગ એક્ટિવિટી, અને પછી આપણે એને સ્લો સ્પીડમાં ચલાવીએ, કારણ કે ફોર જીસીએસઈ સ્ટુડન્ટ્સ એએસ ને એ લેવલના આન્સર્સ કરવા લોકો માટે અઘરા થઈ જાય, તો એને તમે સ્લો સ્પીડમાં એ રેકોર્ડિંગ ચલાવો અને પછી એ લોકો એના આન્સર આપે. સો એ આપણે કેવી રીતે કન્સિડર કરાય, એનું કેવી રીતે મેપ કરવું કે ગ્રેડ આપવો એ લોકોનો?
તમે જે વાત કરો છો એ લેવલ સ્પીકિંગ માટે કરો છો કે
ના, લિસનિંગ ની વાત કરું છું, લિસનિંગ એક્સરસાઇઝ.
ઓકે ઓકે.
કે જ્યારે તમે કોમ્પ્યુટર ઉપર ચલાવતા હો ને એ રેકોર્ડિંગ, ત્યારે એમાં પ્લે બટન કંઈક પ્લેબેક કેવું છે કંઈક છે, એમાં તમે જઈને એની સ્પીડ સ્લો કરી શકો, અને એ સ્લો સ્પીડ કરી અને પછી સ્ટુડન્ટ્સને સાંભળવા માટે થોડું સહેલું થઈ જાય. જે એકદમ ઝડપથી જતું હોય એના બદલે એ લોકોને થઈ જાય. ભાષા તો હજી અઘરી જ હોવાની, પણ એ લોકો ધીમી ગતિમાં સાંભળે તો એ લોકો એનો આન્સર આપી શકે. તો એને કઈ રીતે કન્સિડર કરવું?
ગોપાલભાઈ, એની આઈડિયા?
I think it'd be difficult to use an A-level listening paper for GCSE. If you think about the marking scheme, you're kind of already targeting at a level which is.
Sorry to interrupt. We can't hear you.
Hello, Sonalben.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Unmute, Gopal Bhai.
Sorry. I personally would use GCSE materials for GCSE. But A-level uppers hota tomorrow level is going to be difficult to calibrate your level and your exemplars. Sorry, your grade descriptors.
Yeah.
You're already at an advanced level.
Yeah, but the તકલીફ ઈ છે કે એટલા બધું છે ને આપણી પાસે લિસનિંગ માટે
Hello?
તમે જે જૂના પેપર વાપરો મોસ્ટલી સ્ટુડન્ટ્સ
Hello?
કરી લીધેલા હોય કે 10મા અને 11મા
Can you hear me?
આપણે એની પ્રેક્ટિસ કરાવી દીધી એટલે એ લોકો જાણતા હોય એટલે જે જાણતા હોય પેપર પાછું આપવાથી મને એવું લાગે છે કે કદાચ તમે પૂરેપૂરું ન્યાય ના આપી શકો એટલે જસ્ટ એઝ એ પ્રયોગ તરીકે એકાદો એક્સપેરિમેન્ટ તરીકે આ વસ્તુ કરી શકીએ તો એનો શું ઉપયોગ કરી શકાય ને વર્કઆઉટ થઈ શકે કે નહીં જાણવું
વર્કઆઉટ કરવો છે તો થઈ શકશે આપણે બીકોઝ આપનો જે લેવલ છે અને એક્ઝામ્પલ્સ આવે ત્યારે આપણે સરખામણી કરી શકીએ કે આ લેવલ what is the matching level કયું છે so it's possible now I don't know whether you know but one of the sample materials they've given to us is the 2019 OCR paper.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
So based on that, I don't see why you can't use an older OCR paper as an example, stating that I've already completed this in class.
એ લોકોએ હાશ પાડેલી છે જે પિયર્સનની એ લોકોએ કરેલી હતી ત્યારે એ લોકોએ કીધેલું જ હતું કે યુ કેન આઈ હેવ આસ્ક્ડ ક્વેશ્ચન એ લોકોએ કીધું હતું કે તમે બધું જૂના બોર્ડનું મટીરીયલ બધું વાપરી શકો છો પણ જ્યારે આ પ્રેક્ટિસ બાળકોને કરાવતા હોય કે મોક લેવાતી હોય કે વચ્ચે નાના નાના એસેસમેન્ટ કરાવતા હોય ત્યારે આ પેપર્સનો ઉપયોગ થઈ ગયેલો હોય ને એટલા માટે નવું મટીરીયલ માટે થઈને I was trying to do this way.
Look, there's nothing stopping you.
There's nothing stopping you. Nothing stopping you.
Nothing stopping you.
Kanchan ma'am.
કારણ કે એ લેવલ્સનું સિલેબસ ને જીસીએસસી નું સિલેબસ જુદું છે તો તમે કમ્પેરિઝન ન કરી શકો.
ના એટલે આપણે જે એમાં જે ટોપિક હોય જે સામે મેચ થતા હોય તો ઈ ટોપિક જ આપણે એને પિક કરી હોય ઈ બધા પેપર્સ આખું ના લેવાનું હોય એમાંથી એક્સરસાઇઝ જ લેવાની હોય ધારો કે આજે મેં કરાવેલી હતી મારા વિદ્યાર્થીને તો ઈ એક જ બે પ્રશ્નો કરાવ્યા હતા ઈ પેપરથી કે જે મારા
એ લેવલનું સ્ટાન્ડર્ડ હાયર છે જીસીએસસી કરતા તમે કમ્પેરિઝન ન કરી શકો.
કંચન બેન એમ કે છે કે એને તમે એડેપ્ટ કરીને ઓછું કરવું હોય સ્લો સ્પીડ કરીને તમે if you can adapt it that is fine and exam board as far as they are concerned they are quite happy for you to use your judgment they are leaving it to you that is fine for listening.
એ લેવલ સે વોકેબ્યુલરી હાર્ડ હોય જરાક જીસીએસસી કરતા બાળકને અઘરું પડે.
તમે એક વખત છે ને આ સ્લો સ્પીડમાં કરી અને વિદ્યાર્થીઓ સાથે ઈ પ્રયોગ કરવા જેવો છે ઈ કરી જુઓ અને પછી આપણે શું ફીલ કરીએ છીએ ને કરીએ તો આપણા માટે બહુ સરસ કારણ કે ઘણા બધા વિષયોમાં ઘણા બધા ટોપિકમાં બહુ સરસ એ લોકો પાસે હોય છે એક્સરસાઇઝ
એએસ લેવલના જે પેપર્સ છે એએસ લેવલના પહેલાના એમાંથી થોડીક ટોપિક આપણે પ્રેક્ટિસ તરીકે કરાવી શકીએ જોયા છે એ પેપર્સ અને આપણા જે પિયર્સનના જે પેપર્સ છે હાયરના they are quite difficult as well. Exactly. So AS level ના પેપર હોય એમાંથી અમુક જે ટોપિક્સ છે આપણે ક્લાસ વર્કમાં કરાવી શકીએ પ્રેક્ટિસ તરીકે એમાંથી વોકેબ્યુલરી
ટ્રુ અને બીજું એ છે કે વિજયાબેન તમે આ બધી જે વોકેબ્યુલરી ધારો કે તમને એમ લાગે કે તમે AS નો 2017 નો લેવા માંગો છો તો ધારો કે બે જે એક્સરસાઇઝ કરવા માંગતા હોય એમાંથી જે પણ વોકેબ્યુલરી આપણને એમ લાગે કે સ્ટુડન્ટ્સ ગોઈંગ ટુ સ્ટ્રગલ તમે પ્રીવિયસ એઝ એ રિવિઝન કે એઝ એ નવા શબ્દોને શીખવતા રીતે શીખાવી અને પછી તમે એની પરીક્ષા લ્યો
એટલે તમે એડજસ્ટ કરી શકો એવી રીતના લેવલ માટે એ લેવલ ના નહીં A2 ના નહીં હું AS ના વાત કરું છું
પણ પછી એટલે મારો પ્રશ્ન એ કે પછી એને તમે કેવી રીતે કયા ગ્રેડ સાથે એને ફિટ કરો એ મહત્વનો પ્રશ્ન એ છે કે કર્યું ને બાળકોને ધારો કે 10 માંથી 7 આવ્યા કે 8 આવ્યા તો હું એને પિયર્સન સાથે કઈ રીતે મેચ કરું કે ઈ ગ્રેડ 8 થયો કે ગ્રેડ 7 થયો કે 6 કે 5 ઈ વિચારું છું એમ.
હા, પણ એ જે એમાં ગ્રેડ તમને ક્રાઇટેરિયા તો આપેલા છે. So if they are matching those criteria,
Yeah.
then you give them the appropriate grade, whether it's grade 8 or grade 7 or 6. કારણ કે the two things you are saying are not any different. Material ગમે ત્યાંનું હોય, A લેવલનું હોય કે ડિગ્રી લેવલનું હોય કે GCSE નું હોય કે પ્રાઇમરી સ્કૂલનું હોય.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you matching the criteria for grade 8?
Yes.
That is all we're concerned about. Where you get your questions from is less important. What the answers they give you is more important. Are the answers answering those 4 or 5 bullet points for grade 8 or grade 6 or grade 4 or grade 2? That is the question.
Well, one of the things that I was going to discuss later was you can actually make your own materials up. It doesn't have to be existing materials. And based on that, there's no reason why you cannot use A level or AS level.
Or whatever level.
It's a complete
you can just use it.
Yeah. You then the trick will be matching the complexity to the right grade descriptor. Yeah. That'll be the challenge, and you know that's our experience as teachers of many years of teaching GCSE.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions, please? બીજા કોઈ સવાલ છે કોઈના?
એક જયંતિભાઈ જસ્ટ આ ગ્રેડ ની વાત કરી તો આપણે જ્યારે અસેસ કરીએ તો ફાઇનલ ગ્રેડ આપીએ તો do we have to use just same grades 8 6 4 2 કે પછી in between grades you can put down?
ના in between જ હોય ને, કારણ કે ગ્રેડ 8 છે એ ટોટલી મેચ થતું હોય તો એને ગ્રેડ 8 મળે. ગ્રેડ 8 જેટલું સારું નથી પણ ગ્રેડ 6 જેટલું ખરાબ પણ નથી
7 થાય
તો ગ્રેડ 7 થાય. એ જ પ્રમાણે અથવા તો તમે ગ્રેડ 6 જુઓ, ગ્રેડ 6 જેવું નથી, એનાથી સારું છે પણ ગ્રેડ 8 જેટલું ઉત્તમ નથી એટલે ગ્રેડ 7 થાય. એમ એટલે એ લોકોએ જે ગ્રેડ આપેલા છે બાઉન્ડ્રીઝ એ એવી રીતે જ આપેલા છે કે તમે બધા ગ્રેડ માટે લઈ શકો કે 2 4 6 8 છે એટલે 8 થી વધારે સારું હોય તો ગ્રેડ 9 થઈ જાય ને ઓછું સારું હોય તો 7 થઈ જાય.
Okay. બીજો one more question regarding that. હવે જે એક્ઝામ પેપર્સ આપણે યુઝ કરીએ છીએ તો obviously they are marks, right? Numbers, marks out of 50 કે out of 40, whichever. So listening બધામાં તો have we got a criteria where it says કે ચાલો તમને a total 110 મળ્યા હોય તો that will count as 7 grade or that will count as 6 grade કે એવું કંઈ આપણી પાસે છે sort of criteria?
Vijayaben?
Are we talking about overall grades, final grades, ke individual grades?
Yeah. I'm talking about say ધારો કે listening કર્યું હોય હવે એમાંથી 50 માંથી આપણે say 40 આપ્યા હોય whatever અને so is there a criteria કે ચાલો between 40 and 50?
ગોપાલભાઈ, I think you'll agree કે આપણે individual grading નથી કરતા. આ જે grade descriptor છે એ આપણા marking માટે છે. આપણે રીડિંગ રાઇટિંગ લિસનિંગ માર્કિંગ માટે છે. તમે જે વાત કરો છો ઓવરઓલ ફાઇનલ ગ્રેડની વાત કરો છો ને, which is ધારો કે આ ગ્રેડ આટલા માર્ક્સ મળ્યા તો ટોટલ માર્ક્સ will be 180. એમાંથી ધારો કે ટોટલ માર્ક્સ ફોર લિસનિંગ રીડિંગ રાઇટિંગ બધા થઈને 150 મળ્યા તો એને કયો ગ્રેડ આપીએ? Is that what you are talking about?
So I think I know what exactly.
I think Gopal Bhai needs to do his presentation first because he might have covered some of the points. Pachi apne questions answer kariye.
Yeah, I think that is to do with grade boundaries, and once the grade boundaries are coming from the board, then we can look at those and decide which way to go.
I have worked out the overall grading depending on the grade boundaries of 2009. November 20. So work that out. કે આટલા હોય તો આટલા આ ગ્રેડ મળે, આટલા હોય તો આ ગ્રેડ મળે. That's all there. પણ ઇન્ડિવિજ્યુઅલ નહીં, પણ ગોપાલભાઈ પ્રેઝન્ટ કરે પછી હું વાત કરું એની. And I've done something which I can share then.
Yeah. Any other questions before we go to Gopal Bhai? But તમે જે વાત કરી એ grade boundaries ની છે really more than anything else. So
it's actually a very good point because if you, for example, if all your assessment materials are based off just purely exams, 2020 exam, specimen exam, and you're using just those, you effectively got, if you mark those papers as if it was a final exam, yeah, and you mark it with the correct grades, you automatically should be going into the right grade descriptors based on the marking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's I think that's what you mean by the grade boundaries and that the need for that for some of the papers.
And that will leave us to કે આપણે બધા જ ટોપિક ને થોરો ટીચ કર્યા હોય તો તમે ઈ કોઈ એક પેપર ઉપર ગ્રેડ બાઉન્ડરી નક્કી કરી શકો. Not otherwise. એક ટોપિક બહુ સારો ભણાયો અને બીજો ઓછો કરાયો તો બાળકનું ને નક્કી નહીં કરી શકું ગ્રેડ એના.
હા તો બે વચ્ચેનું થઈ જાય પછી. Okay, can I just share one last point before we move on? We done grade descriptors mapping Thayu. Speaking endorsement, we cover this. Right. Gopal bhai, you want to talk about this in your presentation? Then I'll take this off. You go that, yeah? Gopal bhai?
He's new, please.
Yes, I'll cover it, yeah.
You cover it, okay. Spoken language statement, overreaching, right. So this is the document which Gopal bhai as a center manager has. So you can just click on this, you get the key dates. You click on this, you get additional materials, grade descriptors, past papers, existing support, all on one page, one side, if you like. This is on the Pearson website. The problem is when you click on this, if you're not a center person, then you won't get access to all of them. But it's useful to know what is available. Yeah, it's just for information because most of us are not center managers. Only some privileged people like Gopal bhai are center managers. So, all right. If there are no more questions, I hand you over to Gopal bhai. You got anything? Sawal koi na? Yeah. Gopal bhai, do you want to carry on with JCQ?
Yeah.
Guidance and all that. Over to you.
Can you enable screen sharing, whichever?
Yeah, ek minute.
Join by Kore.
I've done it.
Oh, you're the host.
Join by?
Yeah, I've done it.
Okay, I'm just going to cover some of the JCQ materials and focusing very much on private candidates. I think most of the people who are centers are quite versed with what the sort of, the documentation requirements are. So I'll start off with interim guidance for private candidates. The guidance itself looks like this. Can you all see my screens? Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't go through this in detail. I've just summarized it for you so you can understand the basics of it. So first thing is a quick overview of the assessment process. So the key thing here is we should be assessing private candidates in the same way as I would assess my own students with the same standard. Okay. And as Gent mentioned, I must have an assessment record and retain that evidence, and that includes for private candidates as well. There is some flexibility around the evidence. So, mano ke private candidate hoy ane kadak past, some of the previous materials are different to what I have. That's fine. There's nothing to say the evidence has to be exactly the same. The core of the evidence that we have to try to make it similar, but it doesn't have to be the same. Okay, and one of the things we need to kind of think about when we're looking at the evidence is how the students have been studying. So if it's been all online, that makes it difficult for the students. So we have to factor that in. We look at the existing evidence. We already covered the fact that we have to cover the content. So if a private candidate comes to me, I should be asking them, what content have you covered, so that when the evidence is presented to me, I can then say, yeah, fair enough, because you've only, and that's what, to the point earlier, and that's why I've got the curriculum mapping, which says, so I know, okay, obviously our school life, they obviously can't do the question on school life. Reasonable adjustments as well, and I think we had that earlier today, is if you made any, what reasonable adjustments or access arrangements we have to make, and that's mainly for things like, in the past, it's mainly for people with learning difficulties, like autism, where we have to do a formal process. But obviously this time around, the one thing they've also included is if someone or a student has been specifically impacted by the pandemic or other illness. So I've got, for example, I've got one student who's been in and out of classes with illness. That type of thing, we have to understand that, and we have to be flexible around how we what standard we set for them. And when we do have obviously a new private candidate, then typically you'll have an initial conversation to get from a fact finding to try and understand all this. If there's any questions, just please feel free to stop me. Okay, so obviously when you do private candidates, it's like a two-way relationship, yeah. So I might say, so if a private candidate comes to me and says, okay, this is the evidence I have so far, I might say to them, okay, I require you to do additional assessments, and I want to supervise them, and obviously, and the board have said in the guidance that you can do remote observations of those assessments. Okay. From a center perspective, I'm required to do internal quality assessment, and I have to include any private candidates that as part of that internal QA. So if you're entering private candidates into other centers, then they will have to be included in that internal QA, and obviously you'll have to help them. You may need to help them through that process. The one thing that centers are also requested to do is to do a historical data check, and what that means is, okay, look at the past performance of your center between 2017 and 2019, and explain any differences between the grades that you've calculated for your center and the past performance. And I have to explain any divergence. That analysis should not include any private candidates. So if you as a private candidate's entrant is asked, or they talk about historic data and they say, oh, we need to do this, we do that, then you say, no, it's excluded. They should be excluding that from the historic data check. So types of evidence, yeah? So pre-existing evidence. So as a center, the questions you might get asked is, under what conditions was the evidence produced? And they want to get comfortable around the authenticity, i.e., is that the student's work? Okay, and obviously if it's a third party that's been assessing that child, then again we'll look at the conditions, any regional adjustment, and any conflict of interest. Conflict of interest would mean, for example, okay, X student has their a relative teaching them, that sort of thing. So that any evidence related to that, then it's more likely to be dismissed and not included as part of the group of evidence.
Can you explain third party?
So for example, if you've got if you're using a third party tutor that's not part of your organization, or so you might have someone come in and do an assessment for the child. Yeah, so that's not part of your organization or part of the center.
Right.
And then centers will obviously, if there are doubts about authenticity of work, then they're likely to reject including that evidence. And there is additional guidance in the document I showed about I'll quickly kind of show you. There's a little matrix here which talks about, for example, evidence set marked by a tutor, and if I have a relationship with that tutor, I'm more likely to accept it. Yeah, and then I might actually do the grading decision myself, and then it'll be subject to internal quality assurance. And similarly, you might have an independent third party, and then what I might ask for assurances from that third party as to how they've conducted that that assessment. So then there's a few more examples which I won't go through in detail. Okay. And then we talked about, we've already talked about sort of additional assessments and then assessment materials, which the board have already provided. So, we may, as a center, if for a private candidate, may ask, well, you need to do some additional assessments. And particularly if we think about what I said earlier about trying to make it standardized to what you're doing and making sure that the levels are correct, then we might say, we want you to do additional assessments. And that might be some of the specimen materials the board have provided, or it might be other materials that we have put together ourselves. And this is obviously to, our main thing here is we need to have a range of evidence so that we are able to give a grade, or the assessor has to have enough evidence to be able to give a grade. Yeah. And the other thing, and this is mentioned a couple of times in the guidance, and not just this guidance, some of the other guidance is, if you think a child is borderline, do further assessment so you can decide whether you need to move that candidate up or down. Yeah. And the key thing, obviously, and this is the theme throughout, only assess on what they've studied. Yeah. Quick, any questions so far? That's interim guidance for private candidates.
You want to stop share, you can see them, everyone then.
So, Kapil bhai, is there any kind of એવું ક્યાંય કહેવામાં આવેલું છે ડેવલપર કે તમારી પાસે આટલા pieces of listening કરેલું હોવું જોઈએ, આટલા pieces of reading or writing, or it can vary, isn't it? If I do 4 writing maybe and 3 listening or maybe 2 reading is fine too.
Yeah, there's no guidance specifically on the quantity of the assessments that you need per specification. I think you've got to make sure that from an overarching sort of core theme perspective is that you have enough evidence to be able to give a grade for that specification.
Yeah.
So overall judgment is up to the teacher. The content, I mean, it doesn't really have to be equal weighting for all the 3 skills. You don't have to have the same number of assignments for listening and reading and writing.
Yeah, this is I'm asking because apna students say motta bhage writing ma struggle karta hoy, listening ma they do well. So right. More you do on listening side to give them a better grade. Evi રીતના એ લોકો એ નથી કાઈ રાખેલું ને કે ના તમે
No.
Not on the number of assignments, but you as a teacher would know that if they are not as good at writing,
yeah,
obviously you as a professional would want to mark them down.
Yes.
You cannot just take their
only listening or only reading.
Only listening, that's right. You as a professional have got to make an overall judgment and adjust the grade accordingly. So if their listening is very high, but their writing is poor, then you've got to adjust and come in the middle.
Yeah.
All right? So
the other thing I would add to that is just be careful of if you start doing that. Yeah, you cannot do that for one student. Yeah, you have to apply that whatever weighting you do sort of use in your overall assessment. It's got to be consistent across your students.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you may penalize other students in doing that.
Yeah. Vivaben.
Kapil bhai, એક question છે. તમે કહ્યું કે we can do it, the judgment on individual papers as well. So for example, one of the child has got good in writing and reading, but not good in listening. So can we reassess them on a listening different year paper? Or does it have to have all the papers should be reassessed for the same year? For example, 2019, we assessed them and they didn't do well in listening, for example, but they did well in the other 2 skills.
Yeah. So I think again it goes back to consistency. So you can't just single out a specific candidate saying, "Oh, he did poorly in this exam, so let's give him another go on a different paper," and then not do that for all the others, and then have an impact on all the others as well.
Good.
But we can use the mix and match year papers, or we can't. We can.
I don't see why you can't do that. So there's nothing in the rules which say you can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Amit bhai.
Gopal bhai, a question હતો like slide number 3 માં આપણે internal quality assessments.
Yeah.
So કે સેન્ટર સાથે મળીને કામ કરવાનું છે, એની કઈ ચેકલિસ્ટ છે કે ઇન્ટરનલ ક્વોલિટી એસેસમેન્ટ કઈ રીતે થશે? ઇવન તો આપણે બેગ ઓફ એવિડન્સ આપી દઈશું તો એ લોકો કઈ જાતના આપણને સવાલો પૂછશે, કઈ જાતના આપણને બેઝિકલી ઇન્ટરનલ ગ્રીડિંગ કરશે, એનું કઈ ચેકલિસ્ટ મળી શકે કે આપણે?
I don't think there's a checklist there. The main aim of that is at a center level that the grades you're entering are comparable. So for example, I did that process last year across my 2 classes, and the internal, my process was literally, okay, this person is a grade 6, this person is a grade 6. Which one of this is better? Should any of these be moved up to levels up to 7? And then I've compared them to the 7s that I've allocated. It's that sort of thing. It's you just got to compare them, and that's the process that you're going to do. And realistically, and it goes back to one of the points that was made earlier, if a lot of your assessment is exam based, then you've got marks for that, and most of the marks for listening and certainly for reading, the marks are quite objective. You know, you got a mark scheme. For writing, it's a bit more subjective because you have to fit them into the right grade, the marking descriptors. So that's the type of assessment. All that will happen. There'll be a conversation. You'll be reviewing each other's. My two teachers will be saying, okay, you look at this one, you look at, tell me which one's better. Or that's the assessment process. It's not a checklist as such.
Yeah. Just sorry. Last one. Say for the sake of argument, the person was pretty bad at doing the coursework. Coursework માં એટલું સારું perform નતું કર્યું, પણ એમણે mock exam માં સારું perform કર્યું. So there is a difference of grade, like 2 grades no difference આવે છે. એટલે separately assess કરું તો. But then overall grade will be what, in a sense? So how do you assess in that scenario?
So you got to be careful there, because if somebody performed well in a mock exams and they happen to do less well in an internal sort of pass assessment, from my perspective, I don't see why you cannot grade them purely on the mock exam, because they've shown that they can operate at that level.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I think what you need to bear in mind is which is the later assessment. Is it the mock exam or is it the coursework? Obviously, it's going to be, if you're doing towards the end of the course, then it counts for more than doing it earlier, because it's reasonable to expect them not to do as well in class and perhaps do better in the exam because they've covered a larger piece of the syllabus. The other thing I want to say, Amit Bhai, is they will look at 3 things. Number one, how much of the syllabus you've covered. Now, I gave you that outline, so you can say you covered 4 out of the 5 or 3 out of the 5 areas, if you like. And on that basis, they will then look at the evidence of your students that you give them. You see what I mean?
Yes.
But you as a school must have an idea of how much you have covered. Because not everybody has covered everything. And therefore, you should be testing your students on what you have covered. So once you tell, before you enter them, they are entitled to ask you as a school, how have you been operating? Have you been operating face-to-face or have you been operating online? So you got to say one or the other or a mixture of both. Are your assessments face-to-face or are they online? Okay. So those are the kinds of questions that they probably will need to ask you, and they can then, just to check, ask for one of your students to be interviewed by them remotely. They could do that, and they could ask questions, and then they have an idea of how much work you have covered, how long the school has been in operation. You might have been closed for 1 full term. So that is important for them. Once they get the context in their heads, then they can relate that context of the school running with the assessment information that you've given them. Am I making sense?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jayant.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
જયંતભાઈ, ગોપાલભાઈ અને અમિતભાઈ સાથે અમિતભાઈના સવાલના જવાબમાં ગોપાલભાઈ કીધું કે mock grade જો સારા એવા હોય તો પછી why can we not give grade based on that? But I think mock ના જે papers કે mock નું જે material આપણે વાપરે છે, it's part of the evidence. It is not, we cannot rely on one exam papers. કે ત્યાર પછી mock exam લેવાયેલી હોય ડિસેમ્બર કે જાન્યુઆરી, ત્યાર પછીના આટલા મહિનાઓનું જે કામ છે એમાં પણ બાળકનું પરફોર્મન્સ દેખાડવું. You cannot only based on one mock exam na grade સારા છે અને હવે પછી બાળક પરફોર્મ સારું નથી કરતું, તો you cannot base only on mock exams.
No, you can't base it on one evidence, but what you can, for example, say is he did well in the mock exam and it was in controlled condition, because you can have different emphasis on what evidence you use, because you got to think about how, for example, how controlled it is. So a mock exam, which if the children have completed the syllabus and you do a mock exam, say in April, and compare that to a classwork that's done in April, a mock exam is under controlled conditions. It possibly has more weight than classwork, where the children can talk to each other and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so there is that as well, and that's one of the things I'll cover in a minute.
Yeah. Okay. Gopal, you can carry on now, I think, for the rest of it.
Yeah, so speaking endorsements, so I'll just quickly go through this because obviously speaking endorsements, easy if you're a centre and your children, a bit more difficult if it's a private candidate or what they call a non-taught learner.
Yeah.
So
when you share screen, can you use the symbol at the bottom right-hand corner so that the screen gets bigger? You know, the one where it's a full screen rather than half screen, and then the other half has got your pages, hasn't it? Page 1, page 2. But if you look at the bottom's right-hand kind signal, once you're in PowerPoint, you can then have it full screen.
Is that better?
No, when you're sharing screen. At the moment, it's fine. But are you sharing screen now? Yeah. Now, if you look at that's better. Yeah, there you are.
All right. So I think I've just jumped ahead there. Okay, so obviously private candidates are entitled to have a speaking endorsement, and the centres and the tutors or whoever it is have to work together to facilitate that. And the person that's doing the assessment is the private candidate's tutor, and it's up to them whether they do a one-off assessment. And you can do a one-off assessment which looks at certain, and in the guidance, they've actually got examples of of what type of assessment you can do. You could actually conduct an assessment which covers 2 different tasks, 2 different topics, and a range of purposes of at least 2. And that's partly because of people may not have covered all the syllabuses. And the form of a one-off assessment, you can have an interview description, and this is just straight from the guidance, but shortened. So you can have a role play task, you can have a presentation discussion, you can have a description interview based on a book or a film, or any mixture of these, which kind of gets you to the a comfortable level where you can make that assessment. In terms of and this is why I had it on this, is so I can flick through. In terms of what is required by the assessor, and Gentleman showed this earlier, is each assessor will have to provide a declaration for private candidates. And they're effectively saying that I confirm I'm familiar with the assessment criteria, I do not have a conflict of interest, and I have assessed the candidate using the common assessment criteria. And then they would list and it is a recommendation, yeah? I confirm and I recommend the following endorsement. Okay. Now, there's no requirement for this to be recorded or anything like that, and for you to pass on any evidence to the centre. But this is the form that will need to be filled out by each assessor to be given to the centre. And then as a centre, myself, I'm then having to do a centre declaration, which is this.
And they've got to be done digitally, is that right?
So I couldn't find anything online about having been done digitally. I think it's the physical form at the moment.
Right.
Whether they move digitally or not, I don't know. But
because it does say draft on this one, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does say. No, hang on. That's not draft. That's the latest one I found. The other one is the centre declaration. This is the actual assessor declaration for speaking.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, there was nothing in there which said it was electronic. I think the centre declaration might be electronic because it wasn't.
Oh, right. Maybe it's a central one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go back to this. Okay, I'm just going to go quickly through how determination. A lot of this we've covered already, but I'm just going to see if there's anything that hasn't been covered, and I'll just talk specifically about this. So just one thing as well is every centre is required to have a policy, a centre policy, which provides a framework for the centre. And within that policy, they're required to have a section on private candidates and as part of that policy. And as part in this guidance of determination of grades, this is a JCQ document. They talk about sort of 5 steps how to determine a grade. And the first thing is obviously consider what has been taught, which we've covered already. Yeah. But the key thing here on a flag is you need to think about how deep or superficial that content was taught. Right. And what I mean by that is if you cover the content, but you haven't covered it to the same depth as you would have done otherwise, you need to think about that, because that's not really properly covered for the right level, for the level. And you've got to make sure that the content of whatever questions you do, you give, you have covered that content to the right degree of depth. Yeah. The step 3 is the collection of evidence, and throughout this whole document, the JCQ, and they talk about holistic judgment. Yeah, using a range of evidence. Yeah, so it's not just about using one evidence; it's using a range of evidence and a holistic judgment around the overall grade. Okay, and then the recommended evidence includes assessment materials by board, any of the following, which are organized and marked as per board mark schemes. Yeah. So substantial classwork or homework, that includes remote work, internal tests, mock exams, and any other records that you have of students' standard of work. Yeah, and the key thing here is it marked and organized as per the board mark schemes? There is a caveat, obviously, at times are weird at the moment, that they do say that in exceptional limited circumstances, you may not have any evidence whatsoever available, and you can give a grade based on an oral assessments. But I'm expecting that to be very rare. Evidence can be board provided, third party, or teacher produced. So that goes back to the question around A levels. As a teacher, you're welcome to create or bring in whatever evidence you feel fit, which is, going back to the previous point, markable to the board specification. Okay, and then where possible, you need to meet the assessment objectives of the specification. Right? So what that means is, have you done enough to, in terms of coverage, in terms of the assessment, to actually be able to give the grade and have met the minimum requirements for that specification. If you get to a point where you don't feel you have enough evidence, then for example, if I was asking a private candidate and say, okay, you can then say, we need some additional assessments, and you can get that done. Obviously, there is time to do that. Okay. And then I mentioned this point earlier about consistency of evidence for most students. Yeah. And as a centre, obviously, for my students, I would ensure that the process or whatever evidence I'm using as a base is the same. However, I do have to have some flexibility, and this is student by student basis where, for example, if I've got a child who's been in and out of hospital for the last 3-4 months, I then need to consider that in my overall assessment. Yeah, if someone's a private candidate, for example, and they haven't covered the exact same materials, then I need to make sure that when I'm giving any assessment or requiring any assessments or any additional assessments, that I do not give any of the, any questions related to the topics they've not covered as part of that additional assessment. Yeah, and then there's an overall sort of requirement that the head of centre must be satisfied that the student has been taught sufficient content to form a basis of a grade. So, for example, if a child has only done one term's work, which has covered one topic, then it's going to be very difficult for you or for me as head of centre to be able to say, yeah, I can actually form a basis of a grade. Okay, and then retention of evidence, we have to obviously retain all evidence, and that includes any specific circumstances like illness, someone's passed away, or impacted by the family, by the pandemic. We also need to step 3 is evaluate the quality of evidence. Yeah, so go back to what we said earlier. There's no one type of evidence that takes precedent. You can use a range of evidence. Yeah, recent evidence is more representative. So Jayant touched on that earlier. Okay, and then consider the coverage of the assessment objectives, coverage of content, authenticity, level of control, and marking per mark scheme. So if you meet all, if you're doing assessment which meets all 5 of those criteria, so for example, level of control, if the control level is higher, then you can place more emphasis on that compared to something which is pure classwork, for example. Okay, and establish whether the proposed range of evidence is appropriate for all students. And this goes back to having exceptions. You are going to have exceptions because of illness or bereavement. The key thing is you must document, and you must have sufficient document to back up whatever flexibility you've allowed. Yeah, so for example, if I got an illness, I would get the parents to give me a letter from the doctor saying they've been in and out of hospital, it would have impacted their learning, so on and so forth. The type of thing you do for a special consideration in normal circumstances. And step 5, assign a grade. We mentioned before, internal QA. The grade should be holistic. Yeah. You can use alternate evidence. Consider the quality of work in relation to the assessment materials. Use the grade descriptors and then the grade exemplification. Okay. And then this is one thing which we kind of alluded to, yeah? You must not look at potential. So for example, if a child has gone from, beginning of the year to C, by December is a grade B, you can't then say, well, I extrapolate that and they would have got an A. Yeah, the evidence says the best grade you would have got is B, that's the grade you give. And then we've already kind of looked at the grade descriptors and exemplars. And that's it really from me, unless there's any questions or anything else you want me to cover.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. So that was quite detailed. Karima Vigatapi apne Gopal bhaiya Abhinandan Pathavi apne. Thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you.
Now the most important part is now. I think lots of questions will come up, I'm sure. People will have lots of questions. But before we start, I think one thing is important as far as your Gopal was mentioning every time about controlled environment. Now, because our schools are not running, we are making those assessments. Either they're coming to us at the Bhavan or something like that, then it's fine. But otherwise, if you are doing assessments remotely or they are doing it at home, Gopal Bhai might have some views on how you might do that. Gopal Bhai?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So we obviously started our assessment cycle at our center. So we had one student who was out. So what we did was I emailed them the paper just before the session. They printed it off, did the work, took a picture of it on their phone, WhatsApped it back to me, and we're done. That's an example of things you can do. Yeah, and then you have an online you have an online video link, so you can observe that. And that's something that I know has been done by schools, for example, for 11+ exams. And there's different ways of doing that.
Okay. Any questions? We have stunned everybody. Koi પાસે કાંઈ સવાલ નથી, શું વાત છે?
I must have bored everyone.
No, you
I
made us
thought
think.
we raised the question. I thought you were going to ask one by one. The 3 hands.
Sorry, go on.
Okay, the 3 hands. I didn't see any of them. Okay, let's start with the one on my screen is Dilip Bhai Patel.
Right. Namaste. Thank you very much, Gopal Bhai. Well done. Very good. But I think our presentation ma 99% based on your center point of view, because we all teaching private in an individual student. I think the criteria tamara hata, to I believe they're specific for the center point of view. Am I right?
No, so I've given you the center viewpoint, okay, but part of what I was trying to do there was tell you as potential entrants of private candidates the type of things that we would expect, or I would expect of a private candidate if one was registered with me. Yeah. So yes, it was from a center viewpoint, but I was trying to focus as much as I could on what private candidate, particularly in the first bit. Yeah. The second bit and the grade descriptions, and that's general, that applies to everybody. But the first bit was purely for private candidates. And the main point I was trying to get at is this is what I expect from private candidates, and then the type of interaction you have, and also things to look out for. When you are entering private candidates. So yeah, it was focused. It was angled from a center, but focused on private candidates.
I got two more questions.
Yep.
One more things you should say about the speaking exam at the forms per one of the individual students. No.
Yeah.
But the first presentation Jayanpai did, they say we don't need any evidence of the speaking exams. So still we have to fill the forms?
No. The form is what you're saying to the center that this is the grade I recommend. Pass, distinction, or pass.
I already emailed them. Is it not enough? They asked me through the email.
No, they should be asking for this form.
Yeah, they send me through email. That's what I did. That's what I'm asking question.
They should be having this form and retaining this form.
Okay. And lastly, the materials, because obviously as a Jayanpai said, they've all been locked. We don't have access. So I send the email to the board and they say, because you don't, you have to ask the center or examiner officers. I asked the examiner officers for the materials and they say, belong to our schools, and our teacher categories, so you can't have it. So where am I supposed to stand?
Yeah.
So
we're working on that.
Yeah,
we're working on that. We'll find a way out. Yeah.
Okay, that's the question. Okay.
Yeah. We will find a way. I think we went to get through that somehow without breaking the law. So we can't make a public statement.
Yeah.
All right, but
there's the last one.
Yeah.
Somebody else asked question early on. They says, okay, we do assess and you do the exam markings things. But the whole teachers now do volunteers. They are no professional teacher. Is it okay we carry on the way we understand? I don't know. We understand the system, but we're not qualified. Is it okay?
You might be a volunteer teacher, right? But as far as I'm concerned, you're probably as well as qualified as any other teacher.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah, that's my
just
question.
Just because you don't have a teaching qualification does not make you any less a qualified teacher for Gujarati.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, Sariben.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Gopal. That was very good. I just want to ask you about center policy one. જે આપણે હેન્ડ કરવાનું છે એ સેન્ટર પોલિસીમાં જે બધા ક્રાઇટેરિયા બધા આપ્યા છે આપણે બધા યુઝ કરવાના અંદર when we send that center policy.
So the center policy was just me saying that every center will have a policy on how they're going to conduct the assessment, the teacher's assessment. In terms of criteria, I'm not quite sure કે તમે શું પૂછો છો because
એટલે એ જે center policy નું જે material આવ્યું છે ને where you have to fill out the center and number and everything. પછી એની અંદર boxes માં બધા જે roles and responsibilities ને જે બધું છે we have to use all of them. You have to put your own thing in it.
I'm not sure.
I think you just
એન્ડોર્સમેન્ટની વાત કરે સ્પીકિંગ એન્ડોર્સમેન્ટના જે ઓલા એસેસર્સ
ના સ્પીકિંગ નહીં સેન્ટર પોલિસીની વાત કરું છું જે JCQ એ મોકલ્યું છે ને.
Gopal bhai, what do you do is, I think basically what she's asking as a center, if she wants to open a center tomorrow, how would you guide her, for example, to look at those?
તમે બતાડ્યું કે સેન્ટર પોલિસીનું ફોર્મ જે હતું ને
No, center declaration.
Center declaration policy.
That's for centers to do. That's for centers, not for
એમાં જે બધા ક્રાઇટેરિયા બોક્સીસમાં છે એ બધા આપણે બધા યુઝ કરવાના કે પછી you can change it ke how what do you do?
Let's park that for the time being. We'll come back to that. Yeah.
We'll come back to that. Yeah. Then
Amit bhai.
Yeah.
Amit bhai, we got a question. Amit bhai. No. Viva Ben.
Yeah. Sorry. Let's try to unmute it. Sorry. Big question છે. પહેલો question એ છે કે જે આ evidence આપવાના છે paper copy આપવાના છે scan કરીને આપવાના છે. Is there any guidelines on that one?
No, electronics fine.
પણ આપણે આટલા બધા સ્ટુડન્ટનો આટલા બધા સ્કેન કરીને મોકલવું પડશે એમ તમે કહો છો.
It doesn't matter how the evidence is formed. So when just let me clarify, yeah, we will, as a center, we will not be sending any documentation to the board.
Okay.
For private candidates, I will obviously request the evidence from the tutors, and that could be in electronic form or physical form. So if you've got the physical evidence, and it's easier for you to just give it to somebody, then that's fine as well.
Okay, that's fine.
There's no requirement of whether it's physical or electronic.
Okay, and then second thing, તમારી slide number step number 4 માં લખ્યું હતું કે students should be notified what all evidence should be utilized. What that sentence means?
Okay, so what that means is, so as we're starting this process of teachers assessment, you should be telling the children exactly how you're going to be doing the assessments. So for example, I've already told my students, okay, we'll be doing over the next 6 weeks, we'll be doing past exam papers, okay, and then we'll be doing additional work after that based on whatever criteria, if I need to have additional evidence or not.
Okay, no worries. Okay, thank you very much.
Viva bin Raval.
Just a very quick question છે. આપણે સ્પીકિંગ એન્ડોર્સમેન્ટમાં આપણે કીધું કે ગમે તે રીતે આપણે બે કન્વર્સેશન કરી શકીએ. So can we just do 2 conversations straightforward, or does it have to have one role play and one conversation?
It is better to have at least 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can do 2 different ways. Pitch a story and a conversation is fine?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Kanchan Ben.
મને એક સેન્ટરમાં એવું ઇન્ક્વાયરી આવી છે કે એ લોકોની મિની એક્ઝામ જોઈએ છે. પેપર સેટ તમારા ટ્યુટરે કરવાનું છે. તો એ ત્રણેય સ્કિલનું એક્ઝામ પેપર કલાકનું છે કે 1 કલાકમાં ત્રણેય પતાવવાના છે?
Gopalbhai, does it make any sense, the question, or?
Well, if you આપણે 3 પેપર કરવા છે તો કલાકના પેપર તો હોય. I don't see how you can do it in an hour unless you ખાલી 2-3 question માં writing માં કે 2-3 question listing માં કે એમ select કરતા હો તો then obviously you have to do the timing જે adjust કરવું પડે depending on how much questions you have in there. There's no requirement કે you have to do 3 papers in 1 hour. એવું કાંઈ નથી.
ના, પણ એ લોકો ઇન્ક્વાયરી છે કે તમારે જ પેપર સેટ કરવાનું છે, તમારે જ માર્કિંગ સ્કીમ બનાવીને આપવાનું છે, તો પછી ત્રણેય સ્કિલનું બધું એક ટીચર કેટલું કરી શકે પૂછું છું.
No, you use the past papers. You don't need to use you don't need to create your own ones.
ના, પણ સેન્ટરમાં જઈને એક્ઝામ લેવી હોય તો સેન્ટરની જે રિક્વાયરમેન્ટ છે કે અમારે ત્યાં આવીને એક્ઝામ લો, તો પછી પીએ તમારે ટ્યુટર પેપર સેટ કરે.
Yeah, that's fine. You say, okay, well, this is the paper. Okay, I'm going to use a specimen paper, yeah, or I'm going to use or a combination of listening, reading, and writing, and I'll create one specimen paper from past materials. If that's what they're given to you, that's what I would do. Somebody?
Yeah, પણ જરા કન્ફ્યુઝિંગ છે કે 1 કલાક જ ટાઈમ લખ્યું છે 1 કલાકમાં, પછી 1 કલાકમાં 3 પેપર કેવી રીતે સેટ થાય?
હા તો
કન્ફ્યુઝિંગ.
Yeah, no.
Requirement very confusing છે મારી માટે પણ.
It depends on what they mean, but if they're saying in 1 hour you have to cover the 3 disciplines, then I would take a portion of the listening paper, portion of the reading paper, and portion of the writing paper, and say here you go, and give that to the child.
એટલે 30% બધા કરવા પડે કે શું?
No.
33% ત્રણેયના?
No.
Sorry to interrupt both of you. અમારે પણ સેન્ટરમાં અમારા જે એસેસમેન્ટ કરેલું છે બધું સેન્ટરને આપવાનું છે, અને એ સેન્ટર વાળા અમારા સ્ટુડન્ટની 1 અવરની લિસનિંગ, 1 અવરની રીડિંગ અને 1 અવરની રાઇટિંગ એક્ઝામ લેવાના છે, અને એ લોકો ઓટમ 2020 ના જે પેપર છે ને પીએસએન એ યુઝ કરવાના છે મોક એક્ઝામમાં.
પણ અમારી પાસે આવ્યા જ નથી પેપર, તો અમે કેવી રીતે સેટ કરીને?
નો, સેન્ટર વાળા પાસે બધા પાસે આવી ગયા છે, બધા સેન્ટર વાળા પાસે છે, અને they can access them. Access કરી શકશે એ લોકો અને access student.
Yeah, I think Kanchan, I think we're going to clarify with the center આ બાબત પર, અને I think મેં પાછું વાંચ્યું છે, I think it's each exam 1 hour, પણ આપણે we still have to clarify with them.
Yeah, અમારા સેન્ટર પાસે આવી ગયા છે, actually અમારા બાપ સેન્ટર વાળા પાસે પણ છે, અને અમે જે અહીંયા રજિસ્ટર છે એ સેન્ટર પાસે પણ છે અને તે એક્સેસ કરી શકશે અને એ રીતે અમે એસેસ કરવાના છે અમારા સ્ટુડન્ટ્સને.
So કંચે મેં તમે પૂછી લેજો તમે સેન્ટરને કે તમે પેપર આપો અને આ 3 પેપર આપો તમને અવેલેબલ છે તમને અને પછી then I'll decide from that કે શું યોગ્ય છે કે નથી.
Okay. Thank you, Gopalbhai.
બીજું ગોપાલભાઈ.
Okay, who is next? Sorry, can you raise your hand? Right, Rasila Ben.
કે આપણે સ્પેસિમેન પેપર્સ જે પિયર્સનના આપણે જો યુઝ કરશું તો એ સ્પેસિમેન પેપર્સ તો બધા ઓનલાઈન છે અને બાળકોએ એ બધા જોઈ લીધા છે તો એ આપણે કેવી રીતના આપણે એસેસમેન્ટ માટે વાપરી શકીએ?
That's a good question. That's a good question. They are available online and freely available here, but they're part of the exam board provided materials. So, depending on previously like maybe earlier in the year, I don't see why you cannot use them again.
No, but because answers બધા એ લોકો 100% જ તો એ લોકોને મળશે because the answers are there online as well.
So you use your judgment and do your own questions from a range of past papers.
Correct.
Because that is what I did the outline, didn't I, of all the papers, all the questions from the different themes and different topics.
તો આપણે પછી 2019 and 20 ના વાપરીએ તો for assessment.
You can. So there's nothing stopping you from using the old OCR papers. And in fact, some of the materials they provided is the old OCR 2019.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that is what they mean by authenticity. Authenticity is the candidate's own work or effort. If you've got any doubts about that, then you should try and negate it by offering something that is going to be authentic. It's not authentic if they've done it before or they've got some help from the teachers and so on. Yeah, so try and make it as much of a neutral exercise for them as possible.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I can't see any hands up.
I have one.
Sorry, I'm not on both screens, so sorry. Who am I talking to?
Okay, sorry. Is Urvashi?
Hello, Rush. Yeah, I can see you. Go on.
Actually, દીપાબેને જે હમણાં કહ્યું કે એ લોકો 1 કલાકના પેપર્સ કરવાના છે. As I mentioned કે સ્કૂલ વાળા જે કહે છે કે એ લોકો એક્ઝામ્સ લેશે તો what if they have not covered all the questions, all the topics, I mean.
Well, that is...
દીપાબેનને ક્વેશ્ચન છે કે તમે જે કહો છો કે 1 કલાકના પેપર્સ છે કરશે તમારા તો તમે બધા જ ક્વેશ્ચન આખું ફૂલ પેપર કરાવશો ટેસ્ટ માટે?
Yes, I have covered every single theme, every single topic, 5 themes અને બધી subtopics બધી જ કવર કરી દીધું છે throughout 20 weeks time.
Okay.
So reading, listening and writing. So 3 tasks each week or sometimes 4 or 5 tasks each week and I covered everything.
અને તમે પાસ પેપર્સ ની પણ પ્રેક્ટિસ કરાવી છે કે ખાલી સ્પેસિમેન જ કરાવી છે?
પિયર્સન ના ફાઉન્ડેશન ને હાયર બંને કરાવ્યા પ્લસ OCR ના 3 listening, reading and writing ત્રણે કરાવી દીધા છે OCR ના.
Okay.
So we covered everything.
Yeah, just to be clear, if you haven't covered the materials, the centers cannot insist that you do the whole paper.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. કારણ કે અમે બધા નથી કવર કરેલા. So we need to let the center.
Then what I would do is tell the center saying we haven't covered all the content, and because of that, we are required to remove those questions from the paper.
અને પછી એ પ્રમાણે just use those topics ને એટલામાંથી જ પછી માર્ક્સ આપીશું ને?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Any other questions? Rita bin Kanda?
Just one I have. It's Rekha. I'm a bit puzzled. Amara બાળકોનું registration થઈ ગયું છે. And earlier you said that the deadline for submission to the board is 18th of June. So અમે જ્યારે submit કર્યું હતું ત્યારે the center has sent us information and there they've given us some dates: listening 15th June, reading 15th June, writing 23rd June. So I'm a bit puzzled with this timetable. Obviously, the center will have to let me know, but I'm not sure Tamaramathi koine avyu hoy from a center.
No,
and what have you done about
yeah,
it?
the deadline is 18th of June for the centre to submit, so 23rd of June doesn't work anyway. And what the centres might be doing is they might be conducting internal QA before that deadline, which they will have to do. So they might be putting a deadline to you ahead of that 18th of June deadline.
But not the 23rd of June.
Not the 23rd of June, no.
Yeah.
So,
does it answer your question?
Yeah, well, it does, but what have they just plucked these dates out of somewhere? Because it looks quite official to me. It's just on a WhatsApp message, and I'm just very puzzled. So I guess I'll have to get back to them. But
and dates, what are the dates again? Rekhaben, what are the dates again?
15th June for the listening and reading, and 23rd June for the writing. And spoken language as advised.
That doesn't make sense to me because
those must be the original dates.
Yeah.
appears by mistake.
That doesn't make sense.
You need to go back to the center and say 18th is the final. So there is something remiss. There's something not right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rita Ben Kamdar.
Yeah, just ગોપાલભાઈ ને પ્રશ્ન છે કે એક્ઝામ વિઝાર્ડ ની વાત થતી હતી કે એનો ઉપયોગ કરીને તમે જે પાસ્ટ પેપર્સ હોય એમાંથી તમે મિક્સચર ઓફ બધી એક્સરસાઇઝીસ લઈ અને એની જાતે જ ઈ માર્ક સ્કીમ ક્રિએટ કરે. આર યુ અવેર ઓફ ધેટ? બીકોઝ ઇટ વોઝ બીજા સબ્જેક્ટ્સ માટે અવેલેબલ છે. એ લોકો એક્ઝામ વિઝાર્ડ નો ઉપયોગ કરી અને જુદા જુદા પાસ્ટ પેપર્સ ની એક્સરસાઇઝ માંથી વન પેપર બનાવતા હોય છે, રીડિંગ કે લિસનિંગ કે વોટ એવર, અને એના પરથી એ લોકો માર્ક સ્કીમ પણ એ એક્ઝામ વિઝાર્ડ ક્રિએટ કરી દે.
Yeah, go on, Gopal Bhai, sorry.
So I don't think they've done anything specific for Gujarati. What they have done, that's what that matrix was to help us to do that ourselves. That Jen shared, so if you've covered these topics, you can create your own papers using these questions based on the topics you've covered. And I don't see how a board can do that for you, because each of us will have different students that have covered different topics.
No, we can choose it, but I don't know whether it is an app or through Exam Wizard you can create, તમે select કરી શકો question from different, say for example 2017 no, question number 2 for reading, 2015 no, number 4, number 5, એવી રીતે જુદા પેપર એનું બનાવી અને એની જાતે ક્રિએટ કરે અને પછી એની માર્ક સ્કીમ પણ ક્રિએટ કરે. That is you can do through Exam Wizard. એવું મેં સાંભળ્યું છે.
All right. Okay. We'll explore that, I think.
Yeah, એટલે ઈ કદાચ પૂછી શકાય Pearson question કે for Gujarati if they have,
That would be excellent. I think that is the next step to that curriculum guide that I showed you earlier. Matrix the spreadsheet about the various topics and themes and the questions next to them. So if they can go that far, then they could actually electronically, using their knowledge of the different questions, they can actually produce papers, produce questions and make up a paper. They should be able to do that. I don't think I've seen that for Gujarati. Maybe they are in the process of doing that.
Generally, I don't see how they can do that, because there will be different topics. The question papers will cover different topics, and some people might not have covered some of the topics.
No, but if you
create your own, you create your own.
Yeah, go on. Or you create your own.
Yeah.
Through that. Yeah.
So the software is available for you to do that. I think that's what she's saying.
I understand. Automatically create your own.
That would be brilliant. Yeah. That would be brilliant. The day it happens, let me know.
No, but other subjects are doing it. That's why I'm asking you.
ના હું એ જ વાત કરું છું કે જો ગુજરાતીનું જો થઈ ગયું હોય તો આપણે પિયર્સન ને લાડવા આપવા જાશું. Yeah. Okay, well done, Pearson. You have saved us a lot of hassle. Okay, Vivaben, have you finished or have you got yet another question?
Vijayaben can produce cover.
I have finished. Sorry, let me lower it. Sorry,
yeah, if you take your hand down, then I know.
Sorry,
right.
Sorry.
Okay. Anybody else who wants to ask a question?
No, Vijay has to produce some document, you know, she has to just show some documents she has prepared for overall grade.
Overall grades.
Yeah.
Can I share the screen?
Yes, yes.
So click on share screen, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. પછી શું કરું?
We can see it.
You can see it?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So 2020 November, no? જે grading હતો. What do you call them? Grade boundaries. Yeah. એના આધારે એટલે આપણે ધારો કે આપણે મોક્સ લઈ લીધી હોય ને એના માર્કિંગ આપણે કર્યું હોય અને એના માર્ક્સ બધા નોટ કર્યા હોય તો પછી એ માર્ક્સ ઉપરથી આપણે ગ્રેડ કરી શકીએ. તો this is my just calculation. તો ધારો કે ટોટલ માર્ક્સ 80 થાય, આપણે સ્કેલ કરીએ 1.2 થી આપણે 50 માર્ક્સ હોય, 1.2 થી આપણે સ્કેલ કરીએ 50 જે સ્કેલિંગ આપણે કરવાનું હતું એ કરીને આપણને 180 મળે. તો 180 માંથી અને આપણને ખાલી સ્પીકિંગ, લિસનિંગ એન્ડ રાઇટિંગ ઉપર, નોટ સ્પીકિંગ, રીડિંગ, લિસનિંગ એન્ડ રાઇટિંગ ઉપરથી છે 3. અને આ હાયર પેપર માટે છે બીકોઝ 2020 નવેમ્બરમાં હાયર પેપર જ હતા, એના આધારે આ છે. તો 180 હોય પછી આ 9, 8 these are the overall grades. એટલે જે માર્ક્સ મળે એના ઉપરથી 141 to 80 would be grade 9. Yeah. પછી grade 8. So 140 to 120 would be grade 8. 190 to 99 would be grade 7. એવી રીતના મેં કેલ્ક્યુલેશન કર્યું છે. ગોપાલભાઈ બરાબર છે?
I have not done any analysis, but I must admit that 9 grade looks quite low. Yeah, it's 78%.
Yeah, this is, can you see their, this is from their grade boundaries.
Yeah, no, I'm quite surprised it's so low.
Yeah, that's what I was surprised as well.
The old one was, for an A star, was 90.
Yeah. So અહીંયા આગળ આવી રીતને છે. So based on this, I've done the calculations. Yeah, આવી રીતના આટલા માર્ક્સ હોય તો આટલા ગ્રેડ મળે, આટલા માર્ક્સ આટલા ગ્રેડ મળે. For example, કોઈને 122 મળ્યા હોય તો એને grade A star. This is old one, right? But એને 9 મળે. I know it's very low, but again,
that should be 8.
120, no.
122.
140 to 120. Can you see that? So 121 to 141.
Yeah, is 8.
Yeah, that's what I was. Are you sure?
Yeah.
What will be 9 then?
Well, above 140, 140 to 180.
140 to 1, okay. Then પછીનું 140 આવે ને?
120 to 140. So 122 is between 120 and 140. So it's a grade 8.
Yeah, sorry. That's grade 8, not 9. 8. Sorry. Yeah. And પછી 116 to 7. So yeah, mistake person. 116. So that's about. So that would be grade 7.
That's
Am I right?
You got that right?
Yeah, you got that right. So આ પ્રમાણે calculation કરી શકીએ આપણે જો final grade આપવાનો હોય મોક્સ ઉપર તો. મોક્સ ઉપર, this is based on આપણે જે માર્ક્સ મળ્યા હોય એના ઉપર. પણ આપણે છૂટક જો પેપર કર્યા હોય તો આપણે કેવી રીતે કરી શકીએ? So એ આપણને એ કદાચ ટીચર્સને પ્રશ્ન થાય.
I think the way to do it would be to look at each one of those separately and get an overall grade for.
Yeah, overall, and then scale them as well.
Yeah, you don't.
Can I make a suggestion, right?
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be just like how I did the percentages for grade 9 at 78%. If you put percentages in, that gives you an indication of what your grade should be. Yeah, so 141 divided by 180 is 78, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So do the percentage one.
Yeah.
That will be easier, and give a rough idea. I think you don't have to be scientifically perfect, because these grades that we have got from the board, for example,
these are from the board. I just got this. This is a picture from the board. I've just done it.
હા, બરાબર છે વિજયાબેન તમારી વાત. હું એટલું જ કહું છું કે આ જે બધા એની પાસે figures છે, that have come from a very large number of students, and therefore they have been able to come with some kind of grade boundaries. as far as we are concerned, we are doing something professionally this time. So it is the teacher's judgment about listening.
This is different. The teacher's judgment upar hoy, so that will be different. એના ઉપરથી overall grade આપવો એ teachers માટે મુશ્કેલ થઈ જાય, તો એના માટે આપણે શું કરી શકીએ?
I'm trying to explain that before. I'm saying that if you have looked at the specification for the questions itself, to grade, earlier we were talking about grade descriptors, weren't we? So we got those grade descriptors for various questions and so on. Now, once you look at those grade descriptors for the three of them separately, and you come across a judgment about listening separately and reading separately and writing separately, you can look at those three grades, if you like, and then make a judgment overall across the three grades. So if reading, if writing is lower, for example, that is a 6, listening and reading are 8, then you might go for 7, something like that.
Does it work like that, Gopal bhai?
It doesn't necessarily work like that, but that's a way to get to the right answer, yeah? Because remember, as Jayant Bhai says, is you have to make a holistic view on what the grade should be. You consider the 3 elements and the weighting. You need to think about how you weight that. But I agree. I don't see why if you've covered all the syllabus content, and you say, right, I'm going to do this exam plus, OCR 2019 paper, and you use the grade boundaries to get to an overall result, I don't see how they can question that. It's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Anything goes, really, as long as it's professionally done.
So long as it's professionally done, and we're using their own grade boundaries to make that judgment, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So you can consider each component grade, and then work out the overall grade.
Yeah, and if, for example, you in the listening paper you've only covered 80% of the syllabus, you can quite easily use the percentages and say, well, I'm going to use this, as a basis for as a starting point. I'd say call it a starting point, and then you think about whether you need to adjust it or not. But
yeah, so work out the percentage and then apply that to whatever questions you're doing for assessment.
Okay. We are almost.
Stop sharing.
In total marks 118 nothing.
Okay.
160 છે.
Huh? 60. We have to scale it up to 60.
50 mark listening, 50 mark reading, and 60 mark writing.
No,
160. 180 nothing. Total 180 nothing.
No.
You can settle that. You can settle it amongst yourselves later on. Can we look at any other questions for either me or Gopal bhai? Because we have already spent a lot of time, and I think people might be a bit tired of the screen.
Sorry, Chello, one more question, Urvashi, here. Mapping grids જે તમે બતાવેલી જયંતભાઈ, તે available છે online? શરૂઆતમાં જે તમે mapping grid બતાવી હતી.
If you're a center, it's available online. If you're not, then you'll have to let us know, and we can try and email you one.
Okay, thank you. I will email you. Thank you.
Jayant Bhai, Amit Bhai here. Sorry, same question. Just mentioned mapping છે, grade descriptor છે, exemplifier છે, speaking endorsement છે, અને જે grade ની sheet બતાવી, એટલે આ બધા document જોઈતા હોય તો આપણને મળી શકે કે બધા available છે?
Well, we're going to find a way between myself and Gopal bhai and Vijayaben how to do that.
Okay.
Because we need to make it accessible to everybody in a way that is not breaking the law. So we're trying to work something out, and I'm sure between us we'll come up to something. We can't put it on the website, for example. We can't take it out and put it on our website because that is clear breaking of law. Otherwise, we would have done that. એમાંથી સવાલ અમારે કાઢી ને સીધા આપણે આપણી વેબસાઇટ ઉપર ઓપન કરી નાખીએ. But you can't do that because that would breach the law, obviously, and I would end up in jail. and you wouldn't wish that even to your worst enemy. So the way out would be to do it in a way that is acceptable, because if centers can have access for their teachers to all those, the fact that we are not centers is not our fault. We are not schools, we are not centers. So there will be an allowance of some sort in that area, and we will. I will see how Pearson responds to that. If they're happy, then we'll put it on the website or do it some other way. Yeah? But Gopal Bhai and me will work together and see if we can make that available to you without breaching the law.
Can I say something?
Who is that? Sorry.
Just quickly, Jen bhai.
I can't hear you, sorry.
When मैं જ્યારે board ने पूछ्યું, the board told me if the centers, the examiner officer to let you have it, then they have no problem. I'm sure there's somewhere.
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm saying.
Access apiyo se. That means it's a possibility.
We can't do our jobs.
No.
Yeah. We can't do our jobs without it. It's just a matter of me and Jetiba need to come up with a way to get it to you without breaking the law. That's it.
No, understand. And last question, because the private students for our schools, the exams levani jawabdari is apdi thai or centrally thai? Who's responsible? We help, that's okay, fine. But who's responsible? Who's job?
I would say it's a combined responsibility.
Why?
Because it's your responsibility as a tutor to make sure that they do the right assessments, cover the right materials, and have that communication with the center. And then for the center, it's they're responsible for the internal QA. They still have to be satisfied that the process has been.
We've done a search and
I think it's a work together to get to the right to get to the end goal.
Because of the situation, otherwise it's not. Because of the situation, because we had to work together, or is it responsibilities? I'm asking questions.
No, I think you have to work together to get to the right answer. I mean, and work within the guidelines. If the center can't say to you, the center, for example, can say to you, you must do an additional assessment. Yeah, and that's what I mean by you got to work together. They might have their own requirements as part of their center policy. Yeah, and part of the internal QA. And then you'd have to meet that requirement.
Yeah. Okay.
Gopal bhai, એક જ છેલ્લો question. Online classes ચાલતા હોય અને papers કરાવવા હોય at 2020 November na.
Yeah.
So is it possible to download them and put it on the say Google Classroom and let students do it?
Okay, so this is a legal question.
This is a legal question.
It's a legal question, but if you're doing an assessment, okay, and you put it on the Google Classroom, I do not, in my opinion, I don't see how they can challenge that, but because you have to do the assessment.
Yeah, because we don't have a face-to-face classes.
Yeah,
the only option is to put them online.
You have to get it to them in some way, shape, or form. And if they're your students, and you put in your Google Classroom, but it's restricted, I personally don't think that's an issue.
As long as it's restricted, that should be fine.
That should be fine.
Yeah.
The last information, Gopal bhai, for you. I had an email from the board. The end of this month, the lock should be open for everybody anyway.
That's what we heard the same. We were discussing the same, and we were expecting that to happen this week, some point.
This week, point, yes.
Yeah, but it's not for everything. It's only for student material. It's not for teacher material. That's the problem. So if you go to the website and look at student material,
I'll share it. I can share it. Hang on.
Yeah, go on. Share it.
I think it was going to open on 19th of April, which was yesterday.
Yeah, but that information was wrong.
Okay.
So this is the Pearson website with the materials, yeah. And what you'll see here is you can see some of these things that that's locked, for example. Yeah, with the exemplar materials. Then you got the past training, and here this is the important one. Here you got the assessment materials. They're all locked there.
They're still locked, you see.
Whereas this is for student materials, and that's not locked.
But they say this material will be available end of this month.
I think so. Yeah, we're going to clarify that.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, because I think we are concerned, and as a consortium, we can approach them to say you are being unfair.
Yeah.
And that's how we will try and get them to help us to get it over to our schools, to our teachers. But yeah, let's see how they respond. Otherwise, we'll just have to rely on emails and us sending it to you by email, which is going to be long and laborious because there are quite a number of people, and there are only one or two administrators.
Yeah.
Volunteer administrators.
And I think the other problem with sending by email, Jen, is going to be the listening files are quite large. You will not be able to send them by email.
Yeah. Whether you use email or whether you use,
You'll have to use something else.
you have to use Gmail. I use the other one.
Google Drive.
Google Drive. So yes, things like that you can do, and then send it to multiple people, I suppose. You send that link to say 5 or 6 different people who have asked for it. That should be possible, shouldn't it? Yeah. Okay, we are towards the end, and unless somebody has got something very, very crucially important, can I end by thanking everybody who has taken the time to come for this session. It has been very, very helpful for all of us. We learn from each other all the time. Most grateful to Gopal Bhai Pindoria for sparing his time as the examinations officer for his center and sharing the center information for us. He's available, so if you do need to ask questions about entries or about the center itself and things of that nature, Gopal Bhai, you're happy to field those questions, yes? The best way to communicate with you would be email?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before I say bye-bye and aujo to everyone?
Will you share Gopal Bhai's email with us, please?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Jai Shri
much.
Krishna. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Aujo.
Thank you.
Very helpful as always.
Thank you.
Aujo.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Keep in touch, and God bless you.
Jan bhai.
Thank you. Thank you.